Guys, you know what time of year it is. Yes, that's right. It's time to start your Christmas shopping. Never too early. And why not surprise your friends and family with scale models from Model Citizen Diecast? How about the Porsche 911 GT3R in the bright green AO Racing 2024 Daytona 24 Hours T-Rex livery? Yeah, it looks like a dinosaur. That's in 1/43rd scale by Spark, and it'll make a great stocking stuffer. Or how about a 1953 Porsche 356 Pre-A Coupe in big 1/18th scale by Solido, finished in a deep dark blue. These and many more gift ideas await at modelcitizendiecast.com. Use promo code HERITAGE and get 10% off your order. Limitations apply. Whether it's race cars or road cars, it's Model Citizen Diecast for Christmas, because your inner child still wants to play with cars. Hi, everybody. This is Horsepower Heritage. I'm your host, Maurice Merrick, and you're in the company of fellow gearheads around the world, listening from places like Rochester, New York, Naples, Florida, Pointe Claire, Quebec, Canada, Munich, Germany, Stockholm, Sweden, and Sandhurst, England. Thanks for joining me, and today we're talking about a very unusual auction that happened recently here in the gritty underbelly of Los Angeles. They called it the Junkyard, also known as the Rudi Klein Collection, and you may have seen it on social media. Now, normal people would take one look at the hunks of twisted metal hidden behind those walls and wonder what all the fuss was about. And for me, it was a surreal experience to explore this place. Imagine rows and rows of Porsche bodies stacked 3 high, barns full of engines and transaxles, Maseratis, Ferraris, and Lamborghinis all in various states of decay, a 1956 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing Lightweight, one of 29 alloy-bodied cars that were produced, and this one was locked behind those walls for nearly 50 years. There was also a 1935 Mercedes-Benz 500K Special Coupe that was specifically built for factory driver Rudi Caracciola, who raced the famous Silver Arrow cars of the 1930s. And that one was locked away in a tin roof shed on the property since 1979.
$2,000, $2,500 the back, 25, $3,000 now, $3,000, right, 2,500, I see $3,000.
At the end of the day, RM Sotheby's brought in almost $30 million at the Junkyard sale, and my guests today were there with me to witness it. Jonas Lach is the guy behind Johnny's Garage on Instagram. You may have seen his videos there. And Daniel Harrison is the creator of Limit 55, a YouTube channel dedicated to his vintage car adventures. Jonas and Daniel are part of a small but growing legion of guys in their 20s who are passionate about pre-war cars, which is great because there are thousands of old cars out there that are going to need new caretakers in the years to come. And I'll have links in the show notes so you can follow both Jonas and Daniel. But we had a lot of fun. You know, we talked about the Junkyard auction, but of course also about their personal car interests and what they've got in the garage. That'll be eye-opening, I think. And also about, you know, how much work it is to be a creator on social media and YouTube and things of that nature. Now, if you enjoy Horsepower Heritage, go to buymeacoffee.com/HP Heritage and support the show with a donation. For example, how about 1 year for $12? That's just $1 a month. And your support means a lot. What can you get for $12 anymore after all? And by the way, thank you to those of you who've already donated. Again, that's buymeacoffee.com/HP Heritage. And there's a link in the show notes for that too. So all you've got to do is click it and go. All right, now that's out of the way, let's get to the episode. Thanks for listening, guys. Here are Jonas Lach and Daniel Harrison. Enjoy. Jonas Lach from Johnny's Garage, big Instagram account, one of the biggest car accounts that I follow, that's for sure. And Daniel Harrison from Limit 55 on YouTube. And Daniel, we're sitting in your living room. Thanks for having us in.
You're absolutely very welcome. It's great to be here.
This is a rarity among guys your age, guys in their 20s, who are really into, old cars. And when I say old, I mean 50s and back. Jonas, in your case, you like cars from the 20s and 30s.
Yes, exactly.
And you're quite knowledgeable about that. I know people, you need to check out Johnny's Garage on Instagram to see what I'm talking about. Jonas has been driving and
donuting
and doing like that thing is so crazy. I love the donuts in the snow.
Yes, it's the most fun. But in Germany, we don't get that much snow, unfortunately. So there are only a couple of days where you can actually do it. But whenever there's snow, I'm out and about.
Anyway, so this is our international summit, and just recently we were at the Junkyard auction, RM Sotheby's Junkyard auction in South LA, which was a much anticipated event and one of the most interesting car auctions I've been to. Probably you guys could say the same.
Yeah, I mean, Jonas, you said, we were looking at this Mercedes that didn't quite sell for as much as you'd hoped it would have. You said your heart beats for this car.
Yeah, I mean, it sold
era,
for
30s.
4 million, I think. And the estimate was about 4 to 6 million. Every car sold above the estimate. So
people were excited that day.
Which car are we talking about?
The 500K.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
The Caracciola.
Yes,
coupe.
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really liked it. And to be honest, it was one of my first auctions. I was at the Amelia Island this year. So there was some auctioning going on. But yeah, I prefer when the cars are driving. I prefer these events. But auctions are also very interesting. So, and especially the one at Junkyard in Compton, that was once in a lifetime.
Scary is the word you're looking for.
Yeah, we're going to get into all of it. We're going to talk about the Junkyard auction. I definitely want a post-mortem on that from both of you. And then I also really want to talk about just your personal car fascinations. You both have old cars in the garage. We'll talk about that. And I think we're going to sort of get into a little behind-the-scenes stuff on being creators on YouTube, on Instagram, because we're all sort of doing the same thing and we're all at different stages of that process. So without getting too much into how the sausage is made on there, I think people are kind of interested. But where should we start? I mean, like I say, this is a kind of an international summit. Why don't we start with Daniel, since he's our host here today? Daniel, you grew up in the UK, but you've been in LA for a little while now.
Yeah, my parents moved here for work reasons, right? And I pretty much have grown up in LA, and I love LA, and I think it is the car capital of the world. I saw a thing, it was like maybe on Bloomberg or something. A couple of years ago, people were trying to say Las Vegas was going to become the new car capital of the world, and they started this Las Vegas concourse and all this. I don't buy that for a second, right? LA is the car capital of the world, and I think it always has and always will be. But yeah, I adore the car culture here, and the 50s SoCal road racing scene and everything is my absolute favorite here. And there's tons of events, and that's how we've kept bumping into each other, right?
Yep.
We've keep seeing each other at Monterey Car Week events, and then we saw each other at the Junkyard event, and Jonas flew all the way from Germany for that Junkyard auction put on by Sotheby's. Quite the event. It was interesting to see. I've never been to an event like that. It was strange to see the level of detail they'd put into organizing it as well. Normally you have a tent, a manicured tent, and people are milling around and wearing suits and bidding, but we were on the front lines, this was RVs parked outside with engines ripped out and tents built around them instead. I mean, it was the real deal.
Yeah, if you weren't careful walking around, you were going to get grease on your clothing.
Oh, yeah. No, it was...
I mean, it was raw.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw Bond villain-looking people with briefcases, with like the numeric pad to transfer the funds from the Swiss
Did
bank
you really?
account. Yeah, I saw one guy. And it was really funny to see that guy in a dusty junkyard,
Yeah.
Lots of fun.
Was he stroking a white cat?
He left his cat at home, I think, in the hotel. But it was a really strange place to be.
It was surreal.
It was surreal. It made me feel quite sad, actually. I asked Jonas how you felt, while we were shooting that video at the junkyard.
Yeah, I guess I felt sad as well, but I also felt a little happy because all these cars are sitting there for 40, 50 years in this junkyard behind the big walls. And now at least they see the daylight, or not the daylight, but at least they might be driven again. And that's also good, I guess.
Yeah, some optimistic millionaires saved some of the cars. But
Very optimistic.
yeah,
Because they need everything, with a few exceptions. The 300 SL, the Caracciola 500K Special Coupe,
yep.
a couple of others, but most of them just needed everything. In fact, quite a few of those cars are really just useful for their serial numbers.
Yeah, someone had left that comment, because Jonas and I made a quick little video, which ended up on the Limit 55 YouTube channel, about that auction, and someone left a comment about that, and they seemed kind of, upset that that was the primary driver for people buying these cars and whatever. But I don't really see why that's a bad thing. You've got barn find cars, right? And then you've got junkyard cars a level beneath that. And the 300 SL and the Roadster, like you pointed out, were barn find cars. I mean, that thing's ready to roll, just change the oil, get it going, rock and roll. I said that once about an MGTC. We'll see how that works out for that kid who bought that thing. But, the junkyard cars, like, they're crushed, they're twisted, they're split in half, they've got trees growing out of them. Like, the only value that has is a serial number.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unfortunately.
And
so
rows and rows of 911s, 912s, and 356s stacked, 4 high, I think.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, and I think they were a little bit, the timing of the auction was a little bit past the peak, the optimum time, because we've seen a softening of the market. I think this auction actually needed to happen a year ago.
I agree. I talked with Daniel about that as well, because we were wondering, why are they selling it now? But I mean, the wife died, and now the two sons decided on selling everything. But I think even like 5-6 years ago, at least for the 500K, they would have gotten way more money than today. But also then for the Gullwing, maybe not. So it was probably the right timing. Maybe a year too late or whatever.
That was your favorite, right? The Caracciola 500K?
Yeah, I think I prefer it. I also really like the
takeaway?
Gullwing, but there are so many cars. It was overwhelming. There was it was like going to a very good museum. You don't even know where to start and where to finish. It's just, I also like all the details. They have so many stuff which they never sold. All the engines, all the piston rings in the new old stock packaging. It's incredible.
I'm having regrets, hindsight. I should have bought one of those 356 engines. I really should have, because I've been saying for a long time now I would like to rebuild one of those, and that's a famous engine, right?
Sure.
And see how it works, and they're simple enough, where there's no crazy vacuum lines, there's no electronics, yada yada yada, right?
Yeah, parts are expensive, but the actual teardown is and rebuilding process is pretty straightforward. I mean, obviously machine
the assembly is tough.
Well, but it's
you
not.
gotta know what you're doing.
It's not really any more complicated than a Volkswagen 4-cylinder,
right?
You know, so, and I mean, I've seen those done on the back porch of someone's house and run, for tens of thousands of miles afterward. By the way, I should just mention for listeners who aren't familiar with what we're talking about, and I apologize, guys, if I didn't introduce this very well, but so Rudi Klein was a Los Angeles salvage yard operator. He was originally from Germany, emigrated to the United States in the early 1960s. He was a butcher, I think, for a time, and then
A car butcher or a meat butcher?
no, an actual meat butcher.
Oh, wow.
And, for a time, and then got into the salvage business and operated a specialty salvage yard in South Los Angeles, and they called it Porche Foreign Auto. but to avoid copyright infringement, he dropped the S out of the word Porsche. So it was really Porche
Right.
Foreign
Which
Auto.
I thought was really funny. That's a fun little tidbit.
It was great.
That I'm not
But
sure
I'm pretty sure he
knew.
got into trouble for that because on the Volkswagen T1, it says Porsche, like the actual with an S.
Right.
So at one time there was the S.
Yeah, at one time. You're right. I think they did sort of complain, and so he dropped the S, which was kind of thumbing his nose at them. Not much of a change, but anyway,
I'm surprised Porsche would actually, care about.
I mean, who
Rudi's
knows?
operation?
Who knows? But so Rudi passed away over 20 years ago now, and the yard has been more or less locked up since. I guess his sons have sort of dabbled on eBay and selling parts, but it's not a place you could go to and do business for a long time. So locked behind these tall steel fences with,
the razor wire was a really
razor
nice
wire.
touch.
You can't see inside. It's fully locked down like a prison yard.
Yep.
Behind these walls were 3 Lamborghini Miuras, what we referred to as the Caracciola Coupe, which was a Mercedes-Benz 500K built for Rudi Caracciola, who was a Grand Prix racer for Mercedes-Benz in the 30s. A lot of specials and one-offs. That crazy NSU show car from the 70s.
Oh yes, that was fascinating. Yeah.
And then a ton of 356s and 911s and 912s. That was the bulk of the collection. And then a smattering of Pagoda Mercedes-Benz cars and a few 300
couple of Ferrari 330s.
Right.
There was a Maserati which clearly didn't make it through its night on Sunset Strip on Saturday night one night.
That was rough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It had its face punched in.
And there was a big Jaguar saloon, like late 50s Jaguar saloon that had a really rough front end shunt. It looked like it was a fatal accident. The steering wheel was
I missed that.
bent over.
No, I think it's a cow.
Oh, is this the
Which-
one we looked at?
I think so. The
Yeah.
steering wheel was bent towards the front of the car.
Yeah.
Probably the
Yeah.
dome or the head.
Yeah, that
took
was
care of that?
that was straight
Yeah.
dome. Yeah.
Yeah, it was rough. So I hope I'm painting the picture for you guys. That was the scene of this auction. And there were a few bargains, but there was also a lot of high dollar stuff.
Yeah, it was 28 million or so total. They, you have like one of the poorest neighborhoods in LA, the most underrepresented, overlooked, not cared for neighborhoods.
Highly industrial area.
Right. Next to the LA River and train tracks and all the rest of it. And in amongst that neighborhood, you've got $28 million worth of rust sitting in there. It's just a really, really fascinating thing to try and wrap your head around. It makes you think about value and people and one man's trash is another man's treasure kind of thing. It's just really kind of fascinating to think about. And it made me feel sad overall. But like you said, Jonas, you got me in there. Right. And it was cool to see. It was a pleasure to see.
Yeah, but I mean, in the end, I was very happy that we went because otherwise you would have just seen it on social media and you wouldn't seen it in real life. So I'm very glad that we went. And yeah, I was a little sad, but I mean, now it's gone. So good thing that we saw it.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, Jonas, right, the good thing is that some stuff will be saved, right? They're going to...
Most of it. And if not, it will end up on a wall, like art piece or something. That's also pretty cool.
Yeah, and if it was left to its own devices, it would have fallen back into the ground anyway. So
Yeah,
it was
that's
cool to
absolutely
see. It was the antithesis of Pebble Beach, though, that's for sure. It was certainly the opposite of Pebble.
Yeah, and there were characters at this auction that
The Mercedes and Porsche experts of the world had descended upon that spot. They were there.
that's true.
I mean, it's very interesting places for restoration workshops, right? Because where will all these cars end up? Probably in a restoration workshop. And I guess it's pretty good for a restoration workshop owner to go there. Then you see who buys it, and then there you go, you have your client, you know?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the Porsches, I would say, are going to become outlaws because they were so far gone that a factory correct restoration probably would not be a good direction to go in. But it'll be interesting to see some of these cars back on the road. Certainly, the Miuras are going to be fully restored. You know, the Caracciola 500K. I don't think it needed a whole lot, but it will probably be a full-on nut and bolt restoration.
Probably depends on what the owner wants to do with it.
Yeah.
But you don't see these cars really on the road. But I guess most of them will be restored and shown at Pebble Beach, or the high-end cars.
Yeah.
Because these cars also have a very interesting history. And that's also, I think, it's one of the reasons why they all sold for over the estimate. Because they all set for... I mean, you said he died 20 years ago, so they all at least set for 20 years. And most of them probably for 50 or 40 years, which is also, it's a long period of time of the history of the car, and that makes it interesting, I think, as well, and could even add up to the value, in my opinion.
Yeah, and when he acquired them, they were worth nothing. I mean, they literally were junk.
Yeah, they would have been, yeah.
That brings up another point, which is that all of these cars are going to have salvage titles. So
that should be fun to insure.
Right. Plus, how does it affect the value? I mean, the sort of the mystique and cachet of these cars coming out of Rudi Klein's salvage yard might offset the fact that it's a salvage title. But most collectors want a clean title, and most car valuations are based on a clean title. So it's a really unique case, and I'm just wondering where that's gonna, how that's gonna affect the ultimate value when they're restored. I mean, if they're restored properly, you wouldn't think that it would matter, but it will matter to some.
It wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter for me, to be honest. I don't even know about salvage title, and in like with Germany, to be honest, I've never bought a car from the junkyard. I'm sure there's a thing like that, but also, like back then, I would imagine. Like, not all of these cars have been crashed. There were some cars which were in driving condition. For example, the Gullwing. And most of the valuable cars haven't been, like all the Miuras, they haven't been crashed. Yeah, and I guess with the Porsche, they all have been crashed. But like two Porsche were pretty good. It wouldn't matter for me, to be honest, because I'm the kind of guy who wants to drive the cars. And if, you know... But what do you think, Daniel?
I hadn't thought about that, but it is interesting. I say, don't let the system, don't let salvage title define you. Like
it's part of the history.
You're telling me the 250 GTOs that are racing at Goodwood, that have been smashed to pieces like 17 times in their life. They should have salvage titles, but
right. No,
they probably don't. Right?
It's a good point.
But it is funny how things like that nuke the value of a car. But at the end of the day, it's what intrinsic value it has. Rudi Caracciola still raced for Mercedes, and he still had that car built for him by Mercedes. So
one of one.
Yep. One of one.
Yep.
So it's still special.
Well, I'm just glad we were there to witness it, because those auctions don't come around very often. There have been some pretty prominent auctions of this type in the past. There was a gentleman back east named A.K. Miller, and he collected Stutz automobiles, and he was sort of a hermit, and he kept them in a makeshift barn sort of structure, but it had dirt floors, and it was open to the weather on at least two sides, I think. So those cars deteriorated quite a bit. There was also a guy...
Wait a second. When was this auction? Which year?
The A.K. Miller auction? It's been a long time. Okay. I want to say it's been 30 years.
Okay. That was
it just happened 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's kind of a legendary guy named Barney Pollard who started collecting cars in the 1920s or 30s. And he collected hundreds and hundreds of cars. He had so many cars that at one time he was sinking telephone poles into the ground and then putting a cross beam over the top of a series of telephone poles and then hanging the cars by their
Oh,
bumpers.
right. I like his style. That's cool.
During World War II,
Amazing.
the government was pressuring him to release some of these cars for scrap because it was wartime. They needed the raw materials, and he would kind of release a little bit, but most of them he kind of hid away. He tried to resist that the government's efforts to take his cars. That auction, I want to say, was in the 80s. So there's a few examples that are very similar, but they're few and far between.
Yeah, it's probably not something that will be happening in 2060, right? Like this is, these cars, they're returning to the earth as we speak. If they are sitting in a junkyard, they're being left. And the only way is to, if you think about this in terms of like a life cycle, right? You go in there, you have these auctions, some stuff gets saved, and then it goes back into collections and it goes to shows, and then people die and it gets handed off, and you start the cycle all over again. There'll be more junkyards with these cars that are being restored now. One day my car might end up in a junkyard, unfortunately, but
Maybe.
that's the way the cookie
Do you
crumbles.
really think a restored car, which was restored in 2020, will end up in a junkyard again?
Yes.
I don't think that people will put these cars on a junkyard ever again.
In the same way that, there's a Titanic museum. The people build things, they're heroic and great briefly, and then they end up in a museum or neglected, and then they get found and put in a museum and restored and used, and then they die again.
But if you look at junkyards right now, so a Porsche 356 is always bare metal, some paint on it, mechanical, just mechanics, not a little bit of leather, and that's it. Cars from this, like from 2022, they won't even end up on a junkyard because I think they will just be crushed and melted and recycled as good as they can do it. They're not really good at it.
The plastic appliances.
Guys, I just thought of another really prominent auction of this type. The Baillon Collection in France. It was auctioned by Art Curiel in like 2015 or something. They were all under a makeshift barn.
Delahaye's and fun things.
There was
like
a Bugatti Atlantic in there.
Oh,
I think I heard about
yeah.
this.
That's a funny thing to forget that you
crazy
parked somewhere, isn't it?
Panhards and lots of French stuff, right? So that brought $28.5 million. Facel Vega, Delahaye, Delage, all these.
In what year?
2015?
Something like that. 2015, 2016. Incredible. So
yeah, interesting.
It
But
does happen.
do you really think classic cars from the 50s will end up in the junkyard ever again? To be honest, I never thought about that, but I don't think that will happen.
I mean, in
Because-
like another 100 years, yes. Because who's going to take care of it when you and me die?
I really hope that we are doing such a great job with teaching the younger generation that there are enough of us who will keep these cars running. Because there won't, like, I guess there are some replicas, but there won't be any more of them, And the cars which are being built, they won't get old. So I think the classic cars which are there, they are there. You can't really make new ones.
Yeah. No, you bring up an interesting point.
I think you won't find these on a junkyard again. They will be restored. Maybe if someone crashes it, it will be sold for a little amount and then restored again.
Put it this way,
think.
right? This is what's at stake.
Yeah.
So what you're proposing is what we have now is all we're ever going to have, which, in fairness, is pretty accurate, right? With the exception of these junkyards where people restore stuff. So if this is all we're going to have now, so you're saying they're not going to end up back in junkyards?
No, I don't think so. I mean, who knows? In 200 years, who knows if we even live on this earth anymore? But
there's a lot riding on your shoulders, my son.
But have you guys had the fun and pleasure of just exploring a junkyard yourselves and finding cool stuff? Have you done that?
No,
I'm
to
not
be
sure
honest,
I
not
have
really.
really. A
So-
car junkyard?
I mean,
Not really. No,
when I was growing up,
I'd like to, but
Yes, I've done that, and I bought there was a Mercedes. My first car was a Mercedes W114 from 1970s, and every once in a while I needed some spare parts which you couldn't buy anymore. So I know this one guy, a friend of mine, who has this junkyard, but he also works on cars. So I wouldn't. That's why it didn't came up really quick in my mind. But I guess it's a junkyard, and every once in a while I came to this place, took some parts of the car. He told me, yeah, 10 euros, 20 euros, and that's it. It's very interesting because it's not for free, but it's everything you see, it's somehow like it's for sale, and that's not really expensive because you have to take these parts yourself. So I did it, I guess, a couple of times. It's a cool experience.
are there any good ones in the valley that you know of in LA?
oh, it's been so long since I've done this. I think there's still some places in Sunland where you can maybe find
Yeah,
a
I was
few.
going to say Sunland or Van Nuys.
Yeah.
I feel like, there's a lot of genuinely cool hidden history out there and forgotten things for the car enthusiast in your life. If you were to go and have a look around there are some little hidden gems. Occasionally you see a cool old sign or a bit of neon action or
Yeah.
something like that.
For me, it was always fun to just wander through a junkyard and identify cars, and you just never know what you're going to see, and something different around every corner. I wasn't always necessarily there to get parts that I needed, but just to be curious and look around. And I don't know, it's a cheap entertainment if you're a car guy, but
It's a whole TV shows. I mean, Roadkill,
Right. and
Junkyard Rescue,
but of course,
kind of thing.
when I'm talking about it, that was all pre-internet, right? I mean, I haven't been in a junkyard in a long time.
Yeah, it's weird. I feel like when I talk to my father, he bought cars there, and like if you just talk to car guys who are like 60, 70, it was a common thing. Oh yeah, I got this for $1 from a junkyard or something. It's somehow not that popular anymore. I don't know why, because I think these cool cars are not on a junkyard anymore, and they also won't end up on a junkyard anymore. And you just have these cars from 2005 or 2008, maybe very few from 1990, which are just really trash, I guess, then, if they end up there.
Crushes.
Yeah.
So, Jonas, where did the old car fascination begin with you?
I would say my father, for sure, because it always, like most of the time, it starts with their parents, I guess. He bought his first classic car when he was 15 or 16, I think, together with his father. Then restored it, sold it, bought another one, so on. And I liked, like when I was 15, I was going fishing. I had my girlfriend, did all of that stuff. Cars, a lot of people are saying cars were their first thing, which I really liked when they were 8 already. I always had toys as a little boy, but it started with me really when I was 18, I think, because then I was driving it. And it's a different thing if you are sitting on the right side or on the left side. It's a different thing if you steer the car and feel it.
Get that mic a little closer there for you. Yeah, perfect.
So I guess when I was 17, got my driving license, then it really started. But I guess my father always drove with me classic car events with his Mercedes. So I guess it started with somewhere between 10 and 15, evolved, and then with 18, I was driving my first own classic car. And I really didn't know much about these cars because I didn't learn anything about it. Just from when something broke, I had to repair it myself. And that's just how it went. And then my father bought a Bentley from 1923, a 3-liter Bentley. And somehow I wanted a pre-war car. Couldn't afford a Bentley or a Bugatti. So I bought an Austin 7, which is, I think, one of the cheapest way to get into the pre-war car scene. And yeah, but Daniel also has a pre-war car. That's why we got in touch. So yeah, I guess that's my little journey of cars.
The Austin 7, I think, is a great car, especially yours. It's one of those cars, when you look at a car, so sometimes certain ones have an indescribable fizz. They just look right in every way. I'm not talking about perfectly restored or anything like that. Just, they might have like a perfect little essence, a nice little aura, the patina, everything just comes together for this perfect cocktail. When I look at your car, it kind of makes me feel like that. I don't know. It's funny.
Thank you. That sounds great. Always good to hear.
Well, tell people about the car. Describe the car.
Describe the car.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times when I drive it and I just go to the supermarket, some people ask me, is that an old Bugatti? And I said, no.
There you go.
But if
There
you
go.
have no idea about classic cars and maybe seen a Bugatti in a movie like 2 years ago, then I guess you could think it's a Bugatti. For me, it doesn't look like a Bugatti at all.
It looks like a Bugatti.
Doesn't, yeah.
It's
To the untrained supermarket goer.
Yes, to the untrained. But if you would be at the junkyard auction and tell someone, or I drive a Bugatti and say, show my Austin 7, they would laugh at me.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Yeah.
But it's a boat tail roadster
Yes.
Yeah.
with cycle fenders.
Yeah.
and
true.
skinny little tires and wire wheels.
Yes, exactly.
And no doors, right? It's like
It's
cut
cut
out,
down, yeah.
cut down tub, and it has that like beautiful, hard wearing, weather exposed leather bench that you just hop into with your bomber jacket, and you bomb down the wintry lane, and you might pull over and do a quick donut, and then you pop it back into first, and you keep going because you're just in your bomber jacket and you're going and you're exposed and it's open wheel and there's snow flying everywhere.
Yeah, man. I really miss my car right now.
And I've
because
never even seen the car in person.
True, but you have seen so many videos and pictures. You almost
seen
know
it on
it
the net.
better than me.
I've seen it on the net.
Yeah.
Where did you find it?
So, I have a friend. So we have a big group of Bentley friends. They all have pre-war cars, and not everyone started with a Bentley. That's not the typical start with a pre-war car. So this one guy also started with an Austin 7, and
Get a little bit closer on.
closer.
That. Yeah.
So this one friend also started with an Austin 7 20 years ago, and he still had some Austin 7 friends. So he called a few guys, and I looked at the car. Didn't really like when I drove the car the first time. I was not feeling comfortable at all because it was a weird feeling. And normally, when you test drive a car, you should feel pretty good, right? That's why you buy the car. But I bought it anyway because I like these cars. You don't drive and feel comfortable at the first time. You just get in there, drive it, think interesting, but then you keep driving it, and then you really love it. But that's like you're getting part of the car. You're being part of the car. Like with a modern car, you just get in, drive it. Yeah, you're not a part of it anymore. That's because with my first car was my Mercedes, which was a great car. But I remember at my 18th birthday when I drove it the first time, I thought I will never drive this thing again. It was so weird. But I drove it then the next day, 24 hours, day and night, sit in it because I knew that I will feel comfortable once I get used to it. So it just takes time, but it's very interesting to drive pre-war cars because you just have to learn driving again, I guess.
It's 750cc, right?
Yes.
And 3-speed crash box transmission.
4-speed.
Oh, it's a 4-speed.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And it's a special. I mean, it probably left the factory as a little saloon car, right?
Yes, right.
Yeah.
That's there were around 200, 300 original Austin 7 Ulster. The Ulster were the ones with a boat tail in the back and no roof and all of that. So the original ones are around 60 to 70,000 euros because there are only 200 to 300 of them. And then in the 80s and 90s or even 60s, 70s, a lot of British guys took the body off, put a cheaper aluminum body on, or I mean not cheaper, but lighter, and raced them like go-karts. And that's why it's called a special, because it's not the original body anymore, but it looks like an Ulster now.
It's not unlike guys in the 50s and 60s who took a Ford Model T and put a speedster body on it.
Yep,
they took the sedan body off or the touring body.
Sure.
Yeah. So very, very common.
Or Porsche people doing. I mean, there's infinite Porsche
exactly.
specials,
it's a special, right?
variations.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a whole piece of history, car history, whole car world in of itself. The specials world.
But
It's
what people
fascinating,
oftentimes think I always put special underneath my captions, because I don't want people to think it's an actual Austin 7 because it is a different thing. But what oftentimes people associate with special, they think it's a replica. That's like the people who are not that known in the classic car scene, they always think it's a kit car or something, which it's really not, because the engine is from 1932 and the frame is as well. And I guess the body is now from the 80s, which is already classic as well.
Well, the other thing, too, is the Austin 7 was enormously successful in the same way that the Model T was and the Model A Ford. And the Austin 7 was built under license in Germany by BMW, and it was known as the Dixie. And they proliferated all around the world. So it really is kind of the English Model T.
It is, yes. Yeah. The first, it's a car for everyone. That's what Herbert Austin, I think its name was, wanted, like a car which everybody can afford, because like they started them in 1919 or something, because like cars were a luxury product. No one, like, they were riding around horses and stuff like that. So he just took a very small engine, little body, and that's it. Not a lot of not a lot of luxurious going on there, but just you could go from A to B with your car, your own one.
Yeah, I mean,
brilliant.
The 7 indisputably changed the world in terms of transportation. Seriously, I mean, it did.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
It was a platform. I mean, platform manufacturing, pickup truck, saloon car, special-bodied race cars.
Get a little closer.
They probably had all kinds of different variations.
Yes, exactly.
That they put on that platform.
I never thought about that way, that it changed the world of cars. But I guess, like, isn't the BMW Dixie the first BMW ever?
It was the first automobile.
Yes.
They were building motorcycles before that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, that's already a big thing, but also a lot of people don't even know about it, because the BMW Dixie isn't that famous, I think.
Not here.
Not here at all. And you have the I won't pronounce it right. The American Bantam. That's what the Austin 7 was called in America.
Yeah.
So same thing as the BMW, because BMW and all the license-built cars, I think, in France, there was a Rosengart, also an Austin 7. But the funny thing, the engine block was mirrored. So it was the intake on an Austin 7 is on the left side, and on the Dixie is on the right side. So Austin 7 engine parts are quite cheap, and the Dixie parts are quite rare to find. And really, the Austin 7, you can buy a new engine block. You can't buy that for a Dixie. That's the big problem.
Was the reason for that because the Austin 7 was right-hand drive and the Dixie needed to be left-hand drive? And so because you're talking about intake side, right? So
yeah, that's unusual.
Intake on the right on the Austin 7.
On the left.
On the left. Oh, well then that shoots holes in my theory.
No, intake is on the left, steering wheel is on the right. So but there are Austin 7s with a left-hand drive. So this can't be the issue.
Okay.
Probably just some licensing stuff, so they don't really copy the same car.
That's probably right.
Probably it.
That's probably right. Okay, so you bought this Austin 7. That was kind of your entree to the pre-war car scene. But tell us how you started the Instagram, because what are you at? 250,000 followers?
Not yet, I think. A little less. But it will get there eventually, hopefully.
Yeah.
So how does it start? I guess with my first Mercedes, I had to sell this car because it was a pretty, not the best car, let's say. And I drove this for 5 years all day long. In the wintertime, salt. It was a little rusty. So my dad told me, Jonas, you might want to sell this car because if it gets worse, you don't really get any money for it. So I took pictures with my camera, which was a hobby of me. I really like to take pictures. And I took nice pictures, and then I thought you can't really put all these pictures in your room, like after three car pictures in your room, it's enough. So then someone told me you should just start an Instagram and post them there. So I did that. Then my nickname was Jonny, so Johnny's Garage. That's it. And I didn't really took off. Like the first 1,000 followers, that was already crazy. I never thought about 1,000 people, It's just a number on the internet, but if you imagine 1,000 people on the street, that's a lot of people. Like 200,000, that's crazy. So I started with Reels because Instagram changed. I started with pictures, then started with reels. Then I pulled my sister with skis through our street. There was a lot of snow.
I remember that.
I think
I do too.
That caught fire.
I think that was the
Funny.
first viral video, if you would call it like that. So yeah, and then I just in the same winter I did the donut thing on the parking lot. Yeah, and the rest is history, I
And
guess.
here we are.
It's fantastic.
It is fun because it's just based in authentic fun. You know, there's a lot of like nonsense Instagram reels, but
It's true.
you know, I think at the core of what, you know, you're posting is just a genuine love for cars and pre-war cars. And gosh, I would love to be towed behind an Austin 7 on a pair of old wooden skis. Doesn't that sound like fun? It just
No
sounds
kidding.
like the right thing, you know?
You
Sign me up.
You need to do the
Let's do
the ice St.
Oh
Moritz.
gosh,
I know.
yes.
I really want to do that, but have you seen the cars which are participating there?
Yeah,
The
the
Austin 7
Bugatti's just like yours.
The Austin 7 is beneath 20,000 euros. And I think the ice is above 2 million, above.
I mean, do they really? I don't think they necessarily have a threshold, do they?
Maybe not. It's probably very expensive to participate, I could imagine.
Yeah.
Because, like, I haven't seen an Austin 7 there.
Right.
I've seen Bentleys. So it's
Well, you could crowdfund it.
it's on my list.
They haven't met you yet, though.
Yeah,
you know?
That's right. That's right.
They don't
It's
know
on my
that
list.
somewhere
I
out
might
there.
do it. Let's see. I have the winter tires. I have spikes. I'm prepared. The next event where I will be is a Planai Classic in January, where we will drive up the mountains, closed mountain roads, all of that. So, yeah, let's see. I would like to participate at the ice. That would be amazing.
Yeah, it's a very cool event. I mean, it's it's high end all the way, but I think your car would be a hit there,
I think it would,
especially
too.
if your sister's being towed behind on skis.
That would be pretty cool. But the ice, like last year, there was too much snow. And the year before, I think there was too much sun. So there was a lot of water
Sun.
on the ice. So let's see how this year is going, because it's like all these events in the wintertime, it's so dependent on the weather.
Mm.
So very tough to manage all of that. But I'm not that far. I will be there. I'll try it.
Has it been difficult to manage the growth of your Instagram?
It changed. I'm at 230 something, or 200, almost 230, and it didn't change. That like normally you post a reel, gets like 4 million views, and you get at least 10,000 followers, and that changed a long time. Like, so the past year, I haven't really posted the stuff which I really would love to do, because my head is in my thoughts are changing as well. Right now, I'm just posting like 15 to 20 second videos, which is just mainly cars, just how you start them, all that stuff. But what changed, I think, on Instagram, you can post up to 1 minute and 30 seconds videos. And it's not like it's too long. Instagram is a little bit more like YouTube now. The people want to hear a little story. So that's what I'm doing right now. Of my whole America trip, I'm planning so many videos which I want to do, like of car collections. Like I arrived in San Francisco and I met like 3-4 collections. So I want to, like, here, let me show you the collection which you should visit in San Francisco, and then I will do a little walk around and voiceover. So I will try that and see how that works. But that definitely changed, because these long form videos are starting to be more popular, for sure.
Yeah. And I think you're tapping into like the classic car experience, right? For lack of a better word, when you kind of get into this world, there is so much to see and so many places to go and so many events to attend and different people. There's so many eccentric characters like Maurice. There's so many wonderful people who are willing to share their cars with you as well, and there's such a huge variety of cars. Everybody's got such a wonderful different taste, and I think it's fantastic. But you wouldn't really know it was all there, or the depth. You wouldn't imagine the depth, the extent of the depth of the variety. And if it's funny to think, it's only because of this Austin 7 that, you're able to go and see some of these other collections and meet some of these people and have these experiences.
It is crazy.
It's just fantastic.
I always say social media is a big waste of time, but if you use it in the right way, it can get you to many places, and you also get to know a lot of interesting people we would never met.
Yeah, that's true. It's highly unlikely that we would have met. We certainly wouldn't have met as quickly as we did.
Yep.
And I suppose one of the hopes we would have out of this is that if there are other young people listening, right, who enjoy cars or admire cars, like, that they would feel encouraged to just go and do it. And I think, the key is trying to do it as young as you can, and don't put barriers in front of yourself to doing it. Don't think you need a perfect car or a show car or whatever. Like, you could go and buy, a running MG midget for $4,000 or $5,000, and you'd have a fantastic time, and it would open up your world to a whole new set of experiences. Or you could get a little Austin 7,
Let's talk about your garage for that matter, because you're sharing kind of your trials and tribulations with your MGs. You have a few of them.
Mostly tribulations.
Right.
Yeah.
And we feel your pain. But yeah, so let's talk about what's in your garage.
Well, there's an MGA, which I've slowly kind of restored over a number of years, 10 years. And I got that when I was 15. My dad surprised me with that car, and it was a huge mess, this thing. It needed everything. The interior, it was rusty. The engine had very low oil pressure. I'm actually surprised it ran as long as it did. And yeah, it's taken a lot of work to get it where it is now, but it's in a really drivable state now. And I'm actually surprised by that. There's an incredible reputation for old British cars being unreliable. And I think it's just because people don't really know how to work on them. And there are some parts that are just unreliable out of the box. There's a huge variety of parts you can get, and you have to kind of know what you're doing and what you're buying. I mean, it sounds kind of silly, like you could apply that rule to anything, but it's been quite reliable now that it's been completely rebuilt. And then the other car is a 1948 MGTC.
The car that launched the sports car craze in the United States.
Yeah, it's funny how that car had like such a huge impact on the sports car scene, especially in, East Coast and West Coast and California.
SCCA.
Yeah.
That was the car that people were racing after the war.
Yeah. Yeah. California Sports Car Club stuff. And I think for me, I just kind of finished restoring that car, and the reason I did it in the first place is just because I wanted to see what all those early races were experiencing. I don't know if a lot of people know. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people do know, but there's probably a lot of people that don't know that, one of Carroll Shelby's first race cars was an MGTC, and Phil Hill's first race car was an MGTC. And
Ken Miles.
Legendary.
D, I think.
It was like a TD special.
Right.
Yeah.
What was that called? The flying
shingle.
Flying shingle, yeah.
Yeah, which is a really spectacularly ugly striking impressive looking thing. So I just wanted to see what all the fuss was about, really, and I restored it, and it's really it's an impressive package, I think, for what it is. That the car, I mean, the design of it's a big design in a small package. You get big fenders and fantastic long bonnet and big wheels, but it kind of looks like a huge Rolls-Royce type design, very grand, but it's such a small car. Jonas and I have been talking about this. He thinks the Austin 7 is as big as the TC, and I'm kind of surprised. I believe you. I'm just kind of surprised. I would have thought that the 7 was much smaller, but the 7 has 19-inch wheels as well, which I did not.
4
No.
times 19. 4 times 19.
It looks like such a tiny car, but it's actually quite big.
I mean, we should one day they will be next to each other. I think.
Yes,
one day they have to be.
we have to
So
pick.
maybe we could look up
somewhere
the
to go.
wheel like the
track width.
yeah, but it won't be that much difference. Yeah.
You guys need to do an Instagram reel collab where you each measure the cars out and cut it together.
Oh yeah, that's not a bad idea. Actually,
That's a very good idea.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
I'll get you a ruler for Christmas.
That's why I'm here. But the TC is, it was built in 48, but it's really pre-war tech.
Right, it's a pre-war design.
Right.
They didn't have any money to go rebuilding cars. They had to pivot from building tanks on the line in Abingdon to building cars again. And the TC was the pre-war design that they smartened up a little bit and shipped out to the US to go bring some money back into England, right? England was broke.
Yep. And American flyers and servicemen kind of got familiar with the MG cars during the war, and many of them acquired them during the war.
Right.
Flyers being sort of dashing characters, right?
Yeah. Heroes.
Well, I mean, if you're going to find a girl, you need a car, right?
Rosy, cherub-cheeked, handsome, tall, flying heroes. They saved the world.
Right.
And here they came with their MGs.
So then some of them brought them home, and then there was a guy named Shell Cavalli. Do you know about this?
No, I don't.
Shell Cavalli.
Pray do tell.
He kind of put British cars on the map on the West Coast in the 1950s. He was like the MG guy distributor on the West Coast. Shell Cavalli is the Max Hoffman of British sports cars in the U.S. So, Max Hoffman was the official importer for Porsche, BMW, Mercedes-Benz. The list goes on. So Shell Cavalli did it on the West Coast for British cars.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
That's actually
really interesting.
Yeah.
What is it about MGs other than you wanted that experience? I mean, like, why not Triumphs? Why not? Maybe they weren't.
Well, so to be honest, some of it is accessibility, right? So when you're young, you have no money. And that's why I mentioned like the MG midget example or something, because if, you worked for a summer or something, or you worked an internship, you're never going to have less responsibility than when you're 17, 18, 19, 20, whatever. So what you should really do is while you're living with your parents, take all of the money that you saved working your internship and do something really stupid with it, like buy an MG midget or something like that, and go open up your world. It becomes increasingly harder to do things like that as you get older. And I've been thinking about that a little bit now. It's interesting, when you start working and you have to pay for your house and things, it becomes difficult to justify spending money on cars. So I think the earlier you do it, while you're with your parents, is the time to do it. But the MGs they're on the cheaper end of the spectrum of that kind of 50s, 60s sports cars, but you still get a fantastic experience. I'd initially started looking at Austin Healey's, but the cost of an Austin Healey 3000 relative to an MGA is astronomical, right? So you can still have that open top, manual gearbox, wind in your hair experience with an MG, and I think the MGA is still a really fantastically gorgeous car. I love the hips.
I agree.
So one thing which I thought was very interesting you just said, that you should start very early. I mean, the money thing is always a problem, but there are cars which are affordable. And you know how it is when a grown-up learns to ski or snowboard?
Yeah.
They're afraid of it. And if you buy a car with 17, 15, 18, 20, you're a little dumb. You don't know that much about these cars, but you're also not that afraid of breaking something or of not knowing how to do it.
Yeah.
So that's a very good point. Yeah. Just,
It's funny, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
funny to think about. As you get older, you understand risk. And when you're 18, risk is just a word that starts with the letter R. It doesn't mean anything to you, you know? So I think it's a great thing to do. And I think what we're showing is that you can go and have some fantastic experiences just existing, just being in that world. You get to see and breathe and smell and meet and talk to different people and go to different places. And I think that's a really valuable experience that, I mean, it's my life, you know, I adore that, you know?
yeah. Sometimes I really ask myself, what would I do if I didn't like cars? That would be a strange world. I would be into fishing or something else, but would be different.
I had this very same conversation with someone recently, and I said I could probably drop cars and motorcycles entirely, but I would have to replace it with something, and it would be travel and the outdoors.
Right.
You know, I mean, I could be a backcountry hiker, fisherman, you know, that kind of thing.
But what you're saying there, right, is that you would have to fill it with something. It wouldn't go away. And
Right.
Everybody who hasn't had a kind of experience or doesn't do a lot with their time, there's no void to fill, right?
Right.
So no matter what the hobby is, you know, you bring up skiing or something, right? Once you have that experience, it opens up your world. You know, you only get one life, right? I mean, driving a car, you get to go and see new things, right? It's not static. You can collect art and you can look at art on the walls, and that's fantastic as well. But the unique thing about something like the car world is that, you know, you could drive an Austin 7 Special on the Nordschleife and have that experience, right? I mean, that's a really unique experience. And Jonas, you've gotten to do some kinds of things like this, you know, or driving an MGA in LA at night is a fun experience. You see the neon closer, it's warm here, you get warm nights. But, you know, you could just as easily drive some kind of overlanding Arctic Humvee across the polar ice, and I'm sure that would be an exhilarating experience as well. You know, cars can give you really unique experiences, I
Absolutely. Think. Have you really had your Austin 7
Oh,
at the ring?
Has. Yeah. Oh, he has.
For sure.
For sure, he says.
That's
modestly.
awesome.
I mean, there are two events on the Nürburgring, like Nürburgring Classic and OGP, Oldtimer Grand Prix. I've went to the Nürburgring Classic because it's more like that, not that professional, I would say. And yeah, I mean, I might took 5 to 8 laps. I don't know.
That must have taken 8 days.
That took a long time. People were passing me all the time. But like downhill, it was quite fast. I was flying. But uphill, you know, I'm not sure everybody has seen the Nürburgring, but I've driven on it with a bicycle and I've walked on it. I was in first gear and I had to walk. I had to push my bicycle because I couldn't not drive up there.
Wow.
It is crazy. And it was very slow with the Austin 7 uphills.
Yeah. It used to be shorter back in the day, didn't it? In like the 30s or 40s, the track used to be shorter, I think.
Setups, yes.
But like in that era when that car would have been racing there. I think it was a shorter track. Maybe I'm wrong, but
I mean, the whole modern part, the Grand Prix track wouldn't be there, which are now combined. And there are a few different tracks which are added
variations
later.
of it. And they used to do a Formula One race there, didn't they, in the 50s? Like I think
Yeah,
Jim Clark and all those.
They did Formula 1 and Formula 2 there. It was the site of the German Grand Prix for some time. If I think about 10 years.
Oh, wow. That's a long time.
Yeah. 50s and early 60s. You know, Jackie Stewart famously called it the Green Hell.
Yeah.
Because it was so scary and dangerous. And, you know, you're in the forest.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, it must have been absolutely
It is.
lethal.
I think it's my favorite race which modern race is a 24-hour of Nürburgring. Because I lived at the Nürburgring for a year, did some internship for university there, and I even, my bachelor degree or my bachelor thesis was about Mercedes W126 500 SEC, so the coupe version. I built this for the 24-hour classic race, which was only 6 hours, I think. So, but I was there afterwards for the whole 24-hour race, and it's crazy. Like, there's so much fog, there's rain, you could have snow, you could have 30 degree in summer and sunshine. It is the green hell. It is a crazy place.
Yeah, I would love to go. That's somewhere bucket list place for.
Well, the next time you're in Germany, we just go there. It's really not that hard. Just get a car.
I love Jonas for that reason. He's such a can-do attitude. He's like, next time we go.
Yeah, I have not been. I've never been to Germany.
We can go together, Maurice.
Let's do it. And it's so cool that you can just take whatever you want on the ring.
It's a bit dangerous because a lot of people who are doing these tourist driving, they have really race cars. Like, they have a roll cage, and you really think, well, that shouldn't be street legal and shouldn't be drive on an open day. But
right.
And then you have like just a normal van or a camping van just cruising around. You know, it's fun. It's crazy.
It's such a weird mix.
Yeah, my first car I've driven on the Nürburgring was my Mercedes W123 230E, and I almost spun it, like on the very famous place where everybody's spinning it, and yeah, I will never forget that.
Have you had any professional driving instruction?
No, never.
Is that something that you're interested in doing?
I would that would be very interesting, and I also look not at the moment because I need to save some money, but I would like to buy a Alfa Romeo 1600 GT Junior designed by Bertone from the 70s to do historic racing, because these cars are it's like a 911 but cheaper, because you have a very light car, it's good looking, and you can make it easily as a track day car. So that's a thing. And of course, if I would be more involved into racing, I would also do some instructions and all of that. That would be very interesting. Yeah.
I said to Jonas, we should do a one of those performance driving schools at Laguna Seca or something like that. Lots of fun.
But I just remembered, I did it. I was invited by Friedestein to test new tires in Spain, and there we took a few hot laps with an instructor, and it makes a big difference when someone tells you no more to the left, brake right now, stop braking. It's crazy how the time changes. So it's very interesting, because sometimes when you just drive on a track and you really think, oh, I'm going so fast already, but there's always a way to go faster.
Braking late is something you don't really think to do when you're just driving out on the road, but when you get instruction on the track, you realize how late you actually can brake, and it's astonishing. It's mind-blowing when you maximize the potential of a car. Were you doing that tire thing with old cars?
Modern cars.
Oh, okay.
Did they approach you, Friedestein?
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, you're on the map, buddy.
Yeah, I'm yeah, I mean, I'm trying. It's very tough to make, so, I just do social media right now because I worked for HK Engineering the past 10 months, but I stopped that. So that's really my full-time thing right now, but it's very tough to make money on social media with classic cars. Or I have not figured out the perfect way, because there is money to make. It is possible, but there's not much money or marketing money from companies involved in classic cars, I think. Like, for example, with Alfa Romeo, I talked and they said, you're more than welcome to do whatever you want, but they have no budget for classic cars, which makes sense because they sold all these cars 50 years ago. You know, why should you have a marketing budget for that? It's only the heritage. So let's see where all of this goes, I guess.
Tell people about HK Engineering.
HK Engineering is a restoration workshop which exists over 40 years. Hans Kleisel, the owner, that's why it's called HK, founded it. And he bought his first gull wing when he was, I would say, around 30. So he didn't find anyone who can restore the car, so he just did it himself. And that's how it started. And now it's like the best restoration workshop for gull wings, 300SL Roadster and gull wings. Yeah, and that's where I worked for the past 10 months, and it was an amazing experience. That's also why I got to know Daniel, because I did a research trip for them earlier this year to do research on a car which was raced by Paul O'Shea.
That's
he won
a really funny
55,
story.
56, and 57. He won the sports car championship with a gull wing. And yeah, then I didn't really have much time to do my stuff, to meet friends because I was there for work. But Daniel was like, I was on my way to San Francisco from LA, and Daniel sent me his address, and I put it into the Google Maps, and I said, okay, that's 5 minutes away. I have to go there. And then it ended up in a very long meeting, and then we drove over to a friend's house because he had all these 8mm movies from the track from 55. So I found the gull wing, which I did research on. I found that at Daniel's friend's place.
Completely by accident, we queued up these 8mm films on the projector in the garage.
Yeah.
And we started watching them. And it's just scenes of different tracks in SoCal. And, Pebble Beach road races, Riverside Raceway, this kind of thing.
Incredible stuff.
Really, really cool to see. And Jonas just goes, that's the car. And sure enough, there's this shot where the cameraman was following the gull wing, and then I think the gull wing stops and they do like a pit stop.
You have it all on camera, and it is a car I did research on. It's incredible.
Totally bizarre.
But why did you know that was the exact car? Is it a specific color or?
So you will never, that's with vintage research, you will never know 100% that's really the exact car, because there are a lot of gull wings, they all have the same shape, but this in particular was light blue, which was already a rare color. And the films the videos we are talking about, they were colored films already from 55. So it could have been silver, but on a lot of parts you really think, okay, that has to be light blue. And then the number, it was a 6, I think, was painted in a yellow color.
Yeah.
And you still see some yellow on the doors. And after that, the whole car was painted in a different color with red numbering. And now the car is white, and with the red, you still can see some red stuff underneath the white. So it has to be the car.
Yeah. Well, that's why I asked about color specifically, because race numbers change,
Yeah. I've been to Watkins Glen. They have a big racing archive, the world's largest, I think.
Yeah.
I've been there for 2 weeks, I think, to do research. So they have all the race names, the numbers, but you never find it. So the one thing which would make it 100% certain would be you have to have a chassis number written somewhere, but you will never find that. That's
the other good source is club magazines of the period, and even major nationwide publications often had regional racing blurbs, and they would have incredible details on a given race. So yeah, good useful materials.
Yeah, I've got some booklets from Paramount Ranch.
Oh wow,
Raceway, and they list all of the drivers and the car, and
yeah.
All right, you guys. Well, this has been a treat. Thanks for sitting down with me, and let's make sure people can find you out there on the web. Jonas, you're at Jonny's Garage on Instagram, right?
Yes, Jonny's Garage without an H, and on YouTube as well. I haven't posted there that much, but I will do that in the next few weeks.
Okay, very good. And Daniel Harrison, what are your coordinates?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Instagram with just my name, Daniel.Harrison, but the YouTube channel is called Limit 55, and I mean, it's really just the classic car experience, trying to put classic cars in their correct environment.
Yeah, I guess we're just trying to get the younger generation into classic cars, and I think that's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of fun things to see on Johnny's Garage and Limit 55, I think. Get it while it's hot.
Absolutely. And Daniel, may I say, your videos have just been so delightful. I really enjoy it. So I'll put links in the show notes so that everybody can check it out. Thanks. This has been fun.
I really appreciate you having us on, and it's always fantastic catching up and talking. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all for this episode of Horsepower Heritage. Go to buymeacoffee.com/HP Heritage to support the show and subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'll see you back here on Wednesday, December 4th for more of the people and stories behind the machines. So until then, I'm Maurice Merrick. Thanks for listening.